to NumismaTalks, live from the World's Fair of Money. NumismaTalks happen every second and fourth Thursday of the month. You can check our website at money.org to see what's upcoming. So today, I am happy to introduce you to Kirk Van Brunt. He is an active collector since fourth grade, now a dealer. He is the face behind Argenteus Rare Coins, a Harvard trained lawyer. He did a stint at Harvard Divinity School where he developed a lifelong interest in early Christian history and a fascination with the Emperor Diocletian. As a dealer, one of his specialties is ancient coins, Roman coinage in particular. And he enjoys the opportunity that this area of the numismatics gives to his use of Latin and Greek. So please welcome Kirk Van Brunt.
Thank you, Paula, for that introduction. And thank you, folks, for taking the time to sit in on this discussion. For those who may have dialed in online, I appreciate you as well taking time from your day, and hopefully I can make this interesting. As Paula said, we're going to talk about the silver coinage of the Tetrarchy. When you say silver coinage, really we're talking about the coin, the Argenteus. There are some other coins that have silver in them during this period, and we'll talk about those briefly, but really the focus is on the Argenteus. I have been a collector of this coin for many years. I find it absolutely fascinating. It's an often overlooked coin. I was talking, for example, to an ancient coin dealer this morning, and he's been doing it for 40 years. And I mentioned I was doing this talk, and he looked me in the eye and he said, "What's an Argenteus?" So it is a bit of an obscure area, but it's an area that has an amazing amount of research and scholarship has gone into it. So it's a fascinating area you can just dive into and, maybe never even reach bottom. The agenda, it's an aggressive one. I don't know if we'll be able to get through everything, but I'm going to try. I want to talk a little bit about sources, give a little bit of historical context, then get into the Argenteus coin itself. And then finally, if time allows, just talk about issues for collectors who may be interested in collecting this coin. And okay, so as I said, there's been a lot of research on the Argenteus, and there are three sources that really stand out. And I want to mention them because if you do want to get into them, these are the ones you want to focus on. The earliest one at the bottom there is a little monograph by Alexander Ulochnik called the Cisac Hoard. And that was really the first attempt to catalog the Argenteus in any comprehensive, systematic way. But then shortly after, everybody's familiar with the Rick volumes, and Rick volume 6 is the one that covers this coin. The eminent numismatist C.H.V. Sutherland wrote it. He did a masterful job. It's been sort of the Bible in this area since it was published, coming on 60 years. But recently we have a new source on this coin, and I will just hold this thing up. It's a gigantic book, a tome, almost 700 pages. It's by George Gautier. It's in French right now. I'm not aware of an English translation, but hopefully one will be forthcoming in the future. This book is now really the definitive work on this coin. Just by way of an example, I think Rick, maybe 1,500, 1,800 coins were looked at, whereas Gautier has looked at over 8,500 coins. So a much bigger universe of coins he's had a chance to look at, completely changing the categories that Sutherland had come up with. And of course, if you've worked with this, the Rick volumes and other areas, they're old and they've gotten obsolete. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened, a new scholarship. And so the existing Rick volume, and I think there's an update coming out, but I haven't seen it yet. But the existing one is just frankly obsolete at this point. So Gautier is what I heavily rely on in this presentation. Very quick historical context. I don't want to spend too much time in it, but really this is the coinage of the Tetrarchy. Probably everyone's heard of the Tetrarchy. It's the system of government set up by the Emperor Diocletian, established in 293, and I guess you could say it ran through 312 before it finally sputtered out when Constantine kind of drove a stake in it with his battle at the Milvian Bridge. But really, the Tetrarchy was Diocletian. Diocletian was the Tetrarchy. And he is sort of the central character behind that government and behind the coin itself. So what is the Tetrarchy? Well, in 20 seconds version, his decision was to establish a somewhat novel form of government where there would be two Augustus and two Caesars, Kaisars underneath them. And that would be establish a plan of succession instead of a dynastic or family succession. We would hand the baton down to our hand-picked successor, who would be hopefully excel at being a soldier and a general, and he could just pick up the reins and carry on. At least that was the plan. So here's some biography about him. I won't spend a lot on it other than to say he came from a very humble background, rose through the ranks, started out as basically a private first class and ended up a 5-star general and eventually emperor, of course. Even his detractors, and there were many, grudgingly acknowledged that he was a pretty smart guy. As I said, he established the Tetrarchy really as a form of government. He had lived through the horrible 3rd century of emperors being murdered and assassinated, dying under suspicious circumstances. So he knew well the risks that anyone handling the reins of power was going to face. And so this was his considered solution to the problems that he saw his predecessors facing. And that came out kind of sideways. So if you just sort of twist your head, the point here is that these guys, the first initial tetrarchs, they were all born within 200 miles of each other. They all knew each other. They're all from the same culture and background. So they were a fairly tight-knit group who fought together. And the bottom line is they trusted one another. I can share power with you, and I know you're not going to stab me in the back. Whereas I wouldn't trust my own son or my wife or anyone else, but we've been through the battles. I know you'll stand by me. And so very briefly, the Tetrarchy, they divided up the empire in zones of responsibility. And you can sort of see how each had their little area. They weren't hard and fast boundaries, but and that's just their capitals. We'll move on. So here is just a list of the Tetrarchic people that appear on the coins, the Argenteus. And if you've ever looked at these coins, well, Roman coins in general, they've got all these weird names, and trying to sort it out and keep track of it, and they all sound somewhat the same. So here's a chart that kind of sets out the different versions of the name, what you would see on the coin versus what their official name was, etc. And let me just pause there to say this, I'm going to go pretty fast through some of these slides, but this is available. If you want to reach out, drop me an email, I'm happy to flip you the full presentation. And this is just kind of a chart of the life of the Tetrarchy from 293 through to 312. Here, it's interesting that out east, it was really fairly stable until the end. Whereas in the West, as you can see all those boxes, things began to founder. And there was basically civil war as they tried to sort this out, which eventually led to its demise. So Diocletian is known as a reformer, although I don't know that he would have agreed with that label. And of all the reforms, the one, of course, that interests us is the last one, the reform of the coinage. And without going into too much detail, he changed the aureus. He put in new coins to replace the existing ones, the Argenteus that we're going to talk about, also the Beyond Numis, and some other fractionals, smaller coins. We won't spend any time on those. And then his other big coinage item, and again, we won't dig in too deep, was his famous Edict of Maximum Prices and his revaluation of the coins that he had already issued. And there, I think the key point is the army was suffering from inflation. Everybody was, but I think it's fair to say Diocletian cared about the army, not so much about the hoi polloi and their problems. And really, so the army was, kind of complaining that, hey, I used to be able to buy this knife for $10, and now the guys are charging me $20. What's going on? And so Diocletian's solution was, okay, I'm going to, from now on, what used to be valued at $10, I'm going to say it's worth $20. So now you can use that same amount of money to buy that knife you used to be able to buy. And anticipating that the merchants would, of course, just simply double the price so that it now costs $40, we have this Edict of Maximum Prices that came out in conjunction, basically saying, oh, and by the way, you can't charge any more than this for various items. And the key for us that I'll tie into a little bit later is this is really about the army, as I said. I mean, soldiers were suffering, and that got his attention. All right, so let's just give a quick overview of the Argenteus. What are its physical characteristics? When was it minted? Where was it minted? Why was it minted? So this is an interesting point. Obviously, it's silver, and most people are, oh yeah, the Argenteus was, first coin in, since Nero to have this level of purity. And then they often go on to say, yeah, it was about 90 to 92% silver, which is great. But where did they get that number? If you dig deep enough, I think you find that, well, they don't really have a whole lot to back that statement up. It just kind of appeared and became accepted lore. But there really hasn't been rigorous testing of this coin. However, Gautier does cite a study, and I'm aware of a collector that has had his coins privately tested. And actually, the silver content is more like 97%. I mean, we have to go back to Augustus really to see silver coinage this pure. So when you read people saying it's 90% or 92%, make a mental note that no, actually, it's quite a bit finer than that. In theory, it was 96 to a pound. Of course, often they underweighed their coins, so really they're frequently not quite that heavy. And the size is, and we'll take a look at a number of coins throughout the show, but it was about the size of a dime. When was it issued? So they began issuing this coin in the autumn of 294. And they issued it all the way through to the end of the Tetrarchy. But the mintage activity was very short. This is a graph of the coins that Gautier studied and the dates that he assigned to it. And as you can see, there was a lot of them being issued for the first 3 years, and then the bottom dropped off. And they continued to dribble them out all the way till 312, but in much reduced quantities. So when you look at these coins, most of them are going to be issued in that initial 3 to 4 year period. And this is just the same numbers, but by mint. And you can see the one big one is the Rome mint. where it issued tons of them for 3 years and then stopped. So where was it issued? The initial issuance was by 7 mints, and then it gradually spread to a total of 15 by the end of its run. So there's just a quick list of the mints. If you get the slideshow, you can study these if you'd like. And this is just the activity by year for each of the mints. When were they actually issuing it? And you can see, they came in, issued for a while, stopped. Another mint picked up, stopped. So it was a very haphazard kind of minting activity. And that's just the location of the mints. You can see they're spread all over from east to west. This is kind of interesting. If you look at all of the coins that Gautier studied, this is the breakdown of how many came out of each mint. And what you see is by far Rome, look at that, 27, almost 3,000 of the total of 8,400 coins was from Rome. So Rome, followed by Siscia, Trier, Tichenum, those were the big minters of the Argenteus. And if you're out collecting the coin, those are where you're typically going to see them from those mints. The other ones are more rare. So why did he do this in the first place? There hadn't been a silver coin of this quality issued officially in over 100 years. You have to, as people often say, go back to Nero or Augustus to see something this pure. And here, I haven't mentioned it at this point, but there was early in Diocletian's reign a rebellion by a fellow soldier they thought they could trust, notwithstanding what I said earlier, Carausius, who up and rebelled and ended up staking a claim on Britain and a little bit on the continent as well. But one of the things he did as soon as he laid claim was to issue silver coins like the Argenteus, same type of purity. So he was really the first one to issue something like the Argenteus. And Diocletian and his advisors, I think they just saw what he did and they saw that it was working. And plus there was sort of, well, if he's going to do that, he's kind of set a bar at this level and I need to meet that bar. And what Carausius was really doing is he had needed to reward the army for supporting him and staying loyal. He didn't have a lot of gold, but he had tons of silver. So he said, I'm just going to make one heck of a silver coin, and that's what I'm going to give out to my army as a reward. And he basically did it for the first year, and it worked. He had a very loyal army. They stood by him. Now, he was eventually murdered in a sort of internal dispute, but his army was strong. They stood by him, and had he been able to stay in control, who knows how long he might have hung on. And I think Diocletian saw that, and he felt he needed to at least meet or surpass what Carausius was doing with his army if he was going to properly reward them. Plus, this was all happening when he was just beginning to think about the Tetrarchy, and so it was important to him that the army buy into this. And so giving him good silver was part of greasing the skids. Now, maybe stabilizing the currency was also somewhat of a consideration, but I think that's more of a modern idea that somehow Diocletian cared about the economy insofar, whereas insofar it affected his soldiers, yes, he did care, but beyond that, I don't think he really thought about it. Here's Carausius coin. It's kind of interesting. Realistic portrait. He was not a pretty man. These coins are quite rare. They come up for auction once in a while, and they routinely hammer for very, very generous prices. So let's get into the coin itself. And I'm going to start with the reverse. I think the reverse is the most interesting part of this coin. There are a lot of issues, a lot of varieties, a lot of questions have come up. The obverse, on the other hand, it's been called boring. And there are things to talk about with the obverse, but not nearly as interesting for me. And then at the end, if we have time, I'd also like to just talk about some special Argenteus types that you see from time to time that are kind of outside the norm. Okay, so we'll talk about first about just give an overview of the types of reverses that this coin has. Talk about some of the inscriptions. Review the main types in a little bit more detail, and then talk about some of the issues that have come up and end with a discussion of mint marks, signage. That's a very confusing topic for collectors. And so I'm going to try to sort that out. So there are three main types of reverses. We call them the four tetrarchs sacrificing in front of a fortified structure of some kind. There's what we call a camp gate reverse, and then there's a 96 reverse. Those are the three big ones. A fourth category is what I just call stray cats and dogs, just kind of one-offs that were done for a little bit of time at this mint or at that mint that really were not regular features of the coins, but we'll mention them. So those are the three reverses right there. You can see the four tetrarchs reverse. There's four people standing there in front of, yeah, if you're not sure what that is, it's supposed to be like a fort. And those little bumps are supposed to be like turret little things. And then the 96, that's just the Roman number. And then that's the camp gate. For those of you who collect 4th century coins, the camp gate is, hugely common reverse. It started here, it got popular. So you see it a lot. These are the stray cats and dogs. Quite different. I won't get into a lot of detail. We'll address it maybe later. These were the first two, the middle one was done by a usurper, so he could do what he wanted. The other two were kind of in outlying areas. Carthage was sort of a special case. So they sort of stepped out and did their own thing a little bit. And all of these are fairly rare. So this is a breakdown of the types. Let's see if I can. It looks like the bottom was cut off. But anyway, so what it shows are the how many of the coins in Gautier's study have the different reverse types, and what mint did they come out of. The bottom line that's cut off is that a little over 70% of the reverses of all of the known Argente are the Tetrarch sacrificing type of reverse. 25% have the camp gate. And then about 5% have this 96 reverse. So camp gate and 96, those are much rarer. And the reverse inscriptions are really pretty simple. These are it right here. And by far, the first two are probably easily 2/3 to 3/4 of all coins. Vertus Militum and Victoria Sarmat, or some version of Sarmat. The bottom one is kind of interesting, Sol Invicto. That was issued in 306 by Maximinus while he was in the midst of terrifying Egypt in his version of the Great Persecution. So the thought, or at least my thought, is that he was trying to hammer away or hammer home to people in Egypt. This was minted in Alexandria. That, oh yeah, bear in mind that the official god of Rome is Sol Invictus, not this Christos guy that you guys keep talking about. That's a rare inscription, actually. So let's talk about the sacrificing Tetrarch reverse a little bit. The elements, as you saw, we've got Tetrarch standing in a line. They've got a tripod altar before them, and they're making a sacrifice. Behind them, there's a fortified structure. The interesting thing is the structure is being presented in sort of a 3D or bird's eye view, which is a little unusual, although you do see it on other coins. And the depictions of the reverse vary a lot. Each engraver did it his own way. So although they were all working off some sort of a temple or model, boy, there's not a lot of consistency. And some you can tell were really good engravers, and some were, well, I think a kindergartner could probably do a better job. So here's just an example of how varied the reverse could be from one mint to another. You can see this one, it's kind of like an oval almost, whereas this one's a straight line, kind of a semicircle, and that one's almost a circle. And the turrets, you can see them, they differ in number from one mint to another. But basically, you can see they're all trying to represent the same basic design with their own unique flair to it. So, as I said, we have an altar, we have sacrificing tetrarchs, we've got a fortified city, and none of those elements are unique. In fact, you can see them all over the place. What is unique is they brought them all together in one place on one coin. For example, everyone's seen coins with altars on them. Everyone's seen emperors sacrificing. This is Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius. And that's what's going on the Argenteus with the Tetrarchs. It's the same posture, it's the same pose. And they're all holding the patera like that. Now, what about the fortified city in the background, or fortified structure? That too is not unique. There have been plenty of coins that have had that. This is one with the city of Nicaea or Nicaea. You can see it's the same. Oops, sorry. You can see it's the same basic concept. You've got a walled city here with fortifications and turrets and a gate. Here's a different one. This is a really nice one. Marcianopolis. This is well done. The little difference here is there's an attempt to render the temple in the middle. It's a little interesting. And here's one from Augustus, the city of Augusta Emerita. Same city, Tiberius. And another one from Acrianus. So the fortified city was not a unique design concept. It had been around. And this, in fact, the engravers, they might well have remembered this coin and might have deliberately tried to imitate it on the Argenteus. The second camp gate, this one's replaced the sacrificing Tetrarch's reverse. A changeover occurred in 297 and then spread to the other mints. This is different styles of the reverse that were used. As you can see, each engraver, again, was trying to render the same basic design, but they did their own thing with it. One of the key differences you look for is the number of turrets, 3 here, 4 there, 3 there. You also see they all show an open gate. This guy said, well, I want to really be emphatic about it, so I'm actually going to show the doors being wide open. So you have a turreted gate, you have open doors, and varying numbers of turrets. Precedents. Again, this is not unique or novel. There have been plenty of coins with gates on them. This is Lucius Verus. He's got something very similar. Macrianus again. Septimus Severus. So, again, not a unique design concept, but the design was a little more abstract on the back of the Argenteus. And it wasn't necessarily portraying a specific city, or at least it's not clear that it was, whereas these were tied to specific cities. All right. So let's quickly talk about some of the issues with the reverse. First issue that I want to mention is if you look at these coins, you can see there's this little bullet or dot in the middle. What is that thing? And if you notice, it moves around. This one, it's almost at the top. This one's down a little lower. So what is that bullet? So the bullet is a centering device. When the engraver went to do the coin, he had to draw a circle, put the ring in, and evidently he had something like a compass, and stick it in and sort of swing it around. And it left an incuse mark that came through on the coin. I put these up because if you can see, these are double dots. So apparently the guy put it in, started, and then decided, no, wait a minute, I got to move it. It's not in the right place. So we get double dots. And then the ring, as you might expect, gets doubled. So that kind of confirms that what's going on is a centering device. Now we see this all the time. Here's one, Commodus Aureus has the same deal. But this centering device carries all the way up to modern times. Here's some gold coins that all have a centering device. You can see it right there, right there. Oops. And then even our own coins. Those of you that collect early copper or silver, you're familiar with the little dot in the coin that is well known to have been a centering device. So it's interesting, the engravers in ancient Rome all the way up through the early US were all using the same kinds of techniques. All right, the next issue very quickly are the turrets. What are these? I call them turrets, but they don't really look like a turret. They're weird. Some people have said these look like birds, eagles. But very quickly they kind of morphed into something a little bit more elegant. And so the question has come up, are there really turrets or eagles? And I think the answer is these are all turrets. It's just that the engraver, when they first started, was not really very good at this. If you look at the rest of the coin, he can't even engrave a straight line. It's really kind of like crayons. So I chalk up this eagle-like appearance to an engraver who was, not really good at what he was doing. Anyway, but having said that, what kind of turret looks like that? Now, I'm not an expert on Roman architecture, but you do see it later. I mean, here's something in the 14th century with that exact turret. So maybe it is something. It'd be nice if somebody who was an expert could sort of explain exactly what this is. Or if you want to get into more exotic explanations, maybe it's ET's spaceship. I don't know. Ancient aliens parked on top of walls and we got it on a coin. The other thing is I've been calling it a camp gate, but I think most people now think it's really a city, not a Roman fort. All right, the 96 reverse quickly, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's trying to announce into the world there are 96 of these per pound. The one issue, this is where Rick and Gautier have a big disagreement, is unsigned issues of these coins, the 96 reverse. Sutherland attributed them to Carthage, which actually I don't think made much sense at all. But Gautier has pointed out very persuasively that no, these are really Roman issued coins. This is what it looks like, different styles. Mint marks, I won't spend a lot of time on it other than there are a lot of them. Here is a chart where I have tried to collect all the mint marks and what mint they go to. So if you were to get this coin and has a mark on it, you can refer to a chart like this to figure out where it is. Okay. So the first coins that were issued did not have a mint mark. And so it's always been kind of an interesting undertaking to look at these unsigned issues and determine what mint did it come from. It's actually a little fun because there's a little bit of art to it. And what you do is you look at coins from that are known to have come from a specific mint that have a mark. And then you can see the style of the engraving, the portraiture, and then you can make a pretty good assessment of where the unsigned versions came from. And these are just some of the things you look at. So, for example, this is Diocletian, and from 3 different mints at the same year, and you can see how his portrait is different. Not a lot, but it is different. There is a different style. And here, this is the same thing with Maximian. You can see how his portrait differs pretty significantly from mint to mint. So, and that's how we were able to do it. By way of example, Siskia, an unsigned issue, compare it to a Rome one. If you look at the letter S there and there and compare it to Rome, the S is kind of exaggerated and bigger on the Siskia, and that's usually that alone is kind of a telltale giveaway that that's the mint. Okay, so let's look at the obverse really quickly. It's very simple. And they're mostly very uniform. People have called them boring. Each engraver, of course, had their own style, so they're not like mirror perfect identity, but they are obviously trying to do the same thing. Key point is the portrait is anonymous. They were not deliberately not trying to show individual characteristics of the emperors. It's almost an abstract, generic portrait that they came up with. So you're not going to see something like Nero with a big fat head or some of the other ugly emperors. So these are the portraits. They're all very similar. And the thought here clearly was the Tetrarchy is just getting started. We're 4 rulers, but we want everyone to see us as one. So it's almost like the Trinity, except there's 4. We're 4 but 1. And so it's important that our image all be the same. So there's no distinguishing. And there's special obverses. I won't spend a lot of time. These are kind of oddball cases, rare. So the elements of the obverse, we could spend a long time on it, but they're all pretty much the same. I mentioned the ribbon. That is the one element that does differ from coin to coin and is an important way of distinguishing where unsigned mints or unsigned issues came from. The inscriptions are very similar. This is just the ones you find on Roman coins, coins issued from the Roman mint or the mint at Rome. And they're all, there's not a lot going on here. It's just sort of a declaration of who it is, what his title is. The title is very brief. It's not ornate, full of all kinds of superlatives. And I will just briefly mention, of course, Maximian and Galerius had the same first name. So collectors often look at this and how do I know which one is which? And it's easy because if Maximian is being called a Caesar, then that's always Galerius. And if he's being called an Augustus, then that's generally always Maximian. So very quickly, there are special Argente types that have that name Argente, but they're not Argenteus, but they're kind of quasi. But you see them, so you need to kind of know what they are. One is a half Argenteus. It's, as the name sounds, half of in weight of what a real one is. Special issue, only done for a couple of years. These are actually pretty common. You can get these at a very inexpensive, under $200. Here's one with Constantine's wife, Fausta. And then there's a pseudo Argenteus. I don't know why they gave it this name. It has nothing to do with an Argenteus, but it had some silver in it. And it was issued very briefly as sort of a commemorative coin, handed out probably as gifts. But somewhere in the dim reaches of the past, a numismatist decided to call it a pseudo Argenteus. So, and it's confused generations of collectors ever since. And here are just some samples of what those look like. And again, these are very inexpensive. And then finally, you will also see coins called excuse me, an Argenteus that are issued like in 360 with the Emperor Valens, for example, on them. And again, this is just a coin where somebody, because it had a similar weight and it was silver, affixed the name Argenteus to it, much to the confusion of future collectors. Really, siliqua is what it is. It's a heavy siliqua or a pre-reformed siliqua and other names that it's given. But I wish the word Argenteus was limited to the true Argenteus. Notes for collectors quickly until we run out of time. What moves the price needle? Really, it's the things that move the price needle on any ancient coin. Strike, wear, eye appeal, rarity. Yes, if it's really rare, but otherwise not that much often. So for example, here are some beautiful ones, detailed strike, centered, beautiful toning, iridescent. There's another one. So these are the kinds of coins that get a premium. Whales. There's nothing like some coins, ancient coins, but these are the big ones. This one is probably the rarest and most expensive out there, and I believe there's only one in private hands. There's another one that I saw earlier with Maxentius. So if you're going to collect this, the better mints are Carthage and Alexandria. The better reverses are Carthage, Alexandria again, and 96. The better Tetrarchs you can see there, they're better because they're rarer. And there are fakes in this area. There are tons of barbarous imitations out there. This is a foray. The note here is that you see these in auction catalogs all the time. They're very common. Mostly always they're correctly identified, but every once in a while I've seen these go up where they're being auctioned as authentic. So collector beware. Now, maybe a minute, if you can take a guess at which one you think is the fake. And that is the fake. Just FYI. So how do we collect the coin? All kinds of different possibilities. And that is it, my friends. I think we're out of time for questions, but okay, 2 minutes. If anyone has any questions, and by the way, I'm at table 1204. Please come by. Happy to talk, in greater detail about any of it. All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone taking time to listen to me drone on. As you can tell, I love this coin. I could have probably talked all afternoon about some of it, but once again, if you want to see the PowerPoint, let me know. Happy to flip it to you.